This first case is about the eccentric Caius Veiovis, who was involved in the murder of David Glasser, Edward Frampton, and Robert Chadwell. He was charged with murder in the first degree, kidnapping, and witness intimidation. But Veiovis' alleged involvement in the act was not the only occurrence that drew attention to him. Caius Veiovis had implants in his forehead that looked like horns, green bones tattooed on his fingers, and the number 666 etched above his eyebrows. He was a self-proclaimed vampire and Satanist, and made sure both his body and name looked the part. Veiovis legally changed his name in 2008 from Roy Gutfinski Jr. to Caius Veiovis. Caius is a vampire in the Twilight series, and Veiovis is a Roman god often thought to be escaping from hell. He had previously had a stint with the law that honestly gives him the name Psycho, to say the least. In 1999, Veiovis and his girlfriend, Deanne Jones, made the news for allegedly assaulting a 16-year-old girl. According to prosecutors, they enticed the girl to their motel room, where Jones cut open the girl's back with a razor blade. The couple then kissed each other and licked the girl's blood. The girl needed over 30 stitches in her 7-inch wound, and police were notified after she arrived at the hospital. At the trial, Veiovis identified himself as a Satan worshiper and vampire who craved both his own and others' blood. They were found guilty of elevated aggravated assault and reckless conduct. In 2000, Veiovis received a 10-year prison sentence, with 3 years of his sentence served before being released. All of this was before he even became a Hell's Angel. Fast forward years later, and Veiovis is back again in court with another stomach-turning murder. According to prosecutors, Veiovis helped 2 other men kidnap and shoot the victims to death, and the 2 other men were murdered to eliminate witnesses to one of the killings. Glasser, one of the victims, was set to testify against a Hells Angels member in an assault case. Here's the opening statement by his lawyer.
The Commonwealth has never been able to find the scene of these killers, and therefore I expect there will be no evidence or testimony connecting Mr. Veiovis to the location or locations where these crimes occurred.
The prosecutor argued that Veiovis had a reason to help Hall, who is a high-ranking member of the Hells Angel.
This case that the Commonwealth will present is not about just what the defendant, Caius Veiovis, is up to, but what did the 3 of them do?
However, throughout the trial, Veiovis maintained his innocence and refused to talk to the police or accept any plea deals.
I've been in isolation for 3 years now. I've refused to talk to the cops. I've turned down all numerous plea deals offered me from the beginning. Just 1 month before this trial began, D.A. Capos called my attorney, Daphne Reardon, and told me he knew I did not kill these men, but that he had any say I was involved in the disposal of bodies.
Veiovis also talks about how the DA offered him a deal, which he refused and wouldn't be accepting any similar deal.
He offered me conspiracy after the fact, 7 years. I told my lawyer what I told him and others many times before. My hand was not in this, and I will not let this man sell me my own hide at the price of my integrity. That I'd rather spend the rest of my life in prison and be able to face myself in the mirror at the end of the day and make that kind of deal.
Very strong words from Caius Veiovis, but it wasn't enough to sway the jury, because they found him guilty of 3 counts of murder, kidnapping, and intimidation of a witness.
This was committed with deliberate premeditation. So say you, Mr. Foreperson, was this the verdict of the jury?
One by one, all the verdicts were read, leading to Veiovis serving 3 life sentences without parole. Veiovis didn't take the sentencing lightly and had a very public outburst.
I'll see you all in hell, too. Remember that. Every one of you, I'll see you in hell.
As Veiovis is sent to prison, the victim's family are finally feeling like the closure is close by.
Really am glad it's all over. Like, justice is served, even though we'll never get him back.
To help to bring some type of closure. I don't know how much we're going to get, but it's a start for something.
But it may be an uphill road, because Veiovis plans to appeal the sentence.
Justice was not served. I'm an innocent man. You condemn an innocent man, and I will appeal this.
We'll take a trip down to Hampton Superior Court in Massachusetts to see Adam Lee Hall, where he was given 3 life sentences for murdering 3 men. He was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and kidnapping. In 2014, Hall, along with his accomplices, David Chalou and Caius Veiovis, were all found guilty of committing first-degree murder. These 3 individuals were convicted for shooting David Glasser, Edward Frampton, and Robert Chadwell at Glasser's residence in Pittsfield. After dismembering the bodies, they placed them into plastic plastic bags and transported them in Hall's Buick to a rural area in Beckett, where they buried the remains in a ditch. The victims were last seen alive on the evening of August 27, 2011. The authorities discovered the mutilated bodies 13 days later. Witnesses began taking the stand as the trial began. An ex-girlfriend of Hall testified that he had 3 firearms concealed in a bag of dog food on the night of the 2011 murder. The reason for this despicable act was to stop the victims from testifying another case altogether. During the murder trial, Rose Dawson testified that Hall visited her in the morning. Prosecutors allege he killed 3 men in Berkshire County. Dawson said Hall asked her to buy bleach to clean Hall's Buick. Dawson, along with another witness, Alexandra Ellie, helped wash the car, and she pointed out that a brown liquid came out. Dawson also spoke of an evening at the Hells Angels clubhouse where Hall and others accused of the killings were allegedly mocking and laughing about the victims. Investigators have not been able to find the gun Dawson mentioned, but the district attorney has said that the victims' remains had gunshot wounds. During the trial, the defense attorney attempted to question Dawson's credibility due to her past alleged drug use and what evidence she may be able to provide as a witness. But Judge Jeffrey Kinder had this to say.
The evidence in this case revealed a level of depravity and disregard for human dignity beyond my experience.
This trial wasn't without a bit of drama during the court proceedings.
Over there at the house on Sunday afternoon to meet with you.
20 miles away at a barbecue shop.
Holly will say no more during the remainder of the closing argument.
This court case drew a lot of media attention, mostly because of the notoriety of Hells Angels. So much so that they ended up relocating the trial to Springfield from Berkshire County. For Hall's defense, his lawyers argued that he was innocent and simply being targeted for being part of the Hells Angels. Well, the jury didn't buy that defense, as was evident in their ruling.
Indictment 2011-139, count B5, charging the defendant with murder. You, upon your oath, do say that the defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree. So say you, Madam Floor Lady? Yes. So say you, all ladies and gentlemen of the jury? Yes. By reason of 1, deliberate premeditation. So say you, Madam Floor Lady? Yes. So say you, all ladies and gentlemen of the jury? Yes.
As the verdict is being read, you can hear tears in the background, and all Hall can do is put his head down in pain. He is not found guilty of kidnapping, but of first-degree murder. For that, he is given 3 consecutive life sentences with no possibility of parole. Robert Chadwell's sister had this to say after the verdict had been read.
Definitely there's something that's never going to be filled. I mean, because there are questions that I have that only he can answer, you know what I mean? And he's not going to do that, just like he never apologized because he's not sorry for what he did.
Next, we'll go down to Rhode Island for the peculiar case of Joseph Lancia, the leader of the Hells Angel group in Rhode Island. He was charged with assault with intent to murder, assault with a dangerous weapon, discharging a firearm while committing a crime of violence, and carrying a pistol without a permit, all relating to a 2019 shooting and a 2020 fight outside a strip club in Providence. His fallout with the law started in 2019 when he shot an unidentified victim. On that particular morning in 2019, the victim was driving a Mack semi-truck past the clubhouse located on Wendell Street when the defendant, Lancia, who was standing on the sidewalk, took out a .25 caliber semi-automatic handgun and fired a single shot at the truck. The victim, Richard Starnino, continued driving away and turned onto Messer Street while the defendant went inside the clubhouse. The Rhode Island State Police Tactical Team investigated the shooting and executed a search warrant at the Messer Street clubhouse.
Anyone inside 161 Messer Street? This is the state police. Come out with your hands up. Do it now.
During the search, they discovered evidence that included 3 handguns and different types of ammunition. Additionally, they found the .25 caliber bullet fired by the defendant embedded in the truck's passenger side door. Lancia was released on bail. However, his luck ran out again when there was an altercation at a clubhouse in 2020. This made him violate the terms of his 2019 bail release.
Off-duty member of the nightclub security in the face.
Lancia's lawyer kept arguing that the man who the defendant attacked was a known criminal. criminal.
Client's presumed innocent and has an unblemished criminal record.
Lancia's lawyer argued that the victim threatened to harm the Hells Angels members.
The Hells Angel members, all of them, were in high alert at this point, knowing his history to carry firearms.
However, the court wasn't satisfied with the result and held him without bail.
The court's not satisfied that if he were to be released on bail, that he is going to abide by any terms and conditions that were placed on him.
In 2022, Joseph Lancia was requesting that the judge, who is now presiding over his case, Judge Kirsten E. Rogers, recuse herself from the case because her husband was a lieutenant in the Rhode Island Police PD chapter. Long story short, the judge didn't recuse herself because there was not enough evidence to suggest otherwise. Before his ruling was finalized, Lancia pleaded no contest to the charges laid against him because he believed that he would be given a steeper sentence if the case went to trial.
A 5-year full sentence, all of which is to be served at the ACI.
In his plea deal, Lancia received a sentence of 15 years at the adult correctional institutions, with 5 years to be served and 10 years probation. He was also sentenced to 3 years in prison for the assault charge, with 1 year to be served concurrently with the previous sentence. Additionally, the judge imposed a no-contact order between Lancia and the victim, Richard Starnino.
There is a no-contact order for the protection of Richard Starnino for the duration of 8 years.
The judge also ordered him to pay $3,650 in restitution. During the sentencing, Lancia declined to address the court and kept a very straight face, almost devoid of any emotion.
Anything that you would like to say, sir?
Nothing.
Next, we have David Shalhoub, who is 1/3 of the trio of Caius Veiovis and Adam Lee Hall, who were all involved in a murder. Shalhoub was charged with kidnapping and the murder of 3 men. Shalhoub, a victim of North Adams, aged 47, is facing trial as the second defendant in the 2011 triple homicide case, which drew national attention due to the horrifying nature of the murders. The disfigured remains of 3 Pittsfield men, namely David Glasser, Robert Chadwell, and Edward Frampton, were discovered in Beckett in August 2011. The police and prosecutors have revealed that the victims were abducted, shot, and then mutilated. The prosecutors alleged that Shalhoub was one of the 3 men who executed the murders of Glasser, Chadwell, and Frampton. Shalhoub has denied the charges of murder and other related offenses. David Casey, a key witness in the case, described in detail how Shalhoub and his accomplice Hall butchered the 3 men, cutting their legs, hands, and heads off. One of them told him he slept soundly after killing the 3 victims. Shalhoub's lawyer argued that witnesses that testified against the defendant were jailhouse informants, so was unreliable. According to the prosecutors, Hall, the primary suspect, desired Glasser's death to prevent him from testifying against him in a different case, while the other victims were killed to erase potential witnesses. The Berkshire District Attorney, David Capeless, recommended that 3 consecutive sentences be given to the accused, since there was no possibility of parole. Hampton Superior Court Judge C. Jeffrey Kinder accepted this recommendation, citing that each victim's value needed to be recognized. Kinder remarked that describing the defendant's conduct as heinous would be an understatement. The victims had been subjected to death in a depraved manner. Furthermore, Kinder noted that the defendant had preyed on the disabled and surrounded himself with young women who he could manipulate. Kinder expressed that he would not hesitate to impose the harshest possible sentence in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Capeless echoed Kinder's sentiments and urged the court to show no mercy to the accused, just as Shalhoub had shown no mercy to the victims. After long deliberations on both sides, the jury gave their verdict.
Premeditation with malice aforethought. Mr. Foreman, was this the verdict of the jury? Yes. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, was this your verdict? Yes. And was this verdict unanimous? Yes. You, the jury, further find that your guilty verdict of murder in the first degree is also based upon a theory of extreme atrocity or cruelty. Was this the verdict of the jury, Mr. Foreman? Yes. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, was this your verdict? Yes. And was this verdict unanimous? Yes.
As the verdict is being read by the judge, you can see the look of apathy on Shalhoub's face. He simply didn't care. Shalhoub gets 3 life sentences for his crime. However, David Shalhoub is not letting up. He wants the sentence overturned and took his case to the Supreme Court. Shalhoub appealed his conviction, citing several errors from the original trial that influenced the outcome. However, the Supreme Court rejected the appeal, stating that the verdicts of murder in the first degree are consistent with justice. During the appeal, Shalhoub's lawyer claimed found that there were several errors made during the original trial that affected the outcome.
With regard to the photos of the weapons, this court found error in both the Viovis and Hall decisions with the court's admission of the evidence of the studded baseball bat. That evidence was admitted here, but unlike in the cases of Viovis and Hall, the forensic testimony here was not the same.
Specifically, he argued that the judge gave improper instructions to the jury, allowed the admission of unfairly prejudicial character evidence, and rejected the prosecution's argument regarding statements made by Hall. Additionally, the appeal contended that the prosecution made multiple inappropriate statements during their opening and closing arguments. The court reviewed the 2013 trial and concluded that there were no grounds to overturn the convictions or reduce the sentences. Next, we'll take a trip down to Las Vegas, where Richard DeVries was taken into custody on felony charges, including racketeering. The reputed president of the Las Vegas Hells Angels, Richard DeVries, was arrested during a court hearing in October 2020. DeVries, along with 7 others, was indicted on racketeering charges linked to the May shooting on a Henderson highway. Some of the charges carry enhancements for promoting or assisting a criminal gang. The charge associated with the charge of racketeering include conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, battery, and discharging a firearm at or into an occupied structure. Prosecutors accused Hells Angels members, including DeVries, of opening fire and injuring 6 Vagos motorcyclists on May 29th on U.S. Highway 95, west of Wagon Wheel Drive.
You know that a month back, about a month ago in San Bernardino, a Vagos did kill a Hells Angels.
Prosecutors believe that the gunfire may have been in retaliation for a San Bernardino shooting that resulted in the death of a Hells Angels motorcyclist, although a Vagos member disputed this claim during a grand jury hearing in June, according to court transcripts. During Memorial Day weekend, a group of bikers, which included members of the Hells Angels, were on a ride through Arizona and northern Nevada. Evidence presented to the jury reportedly showed members of the Hells Angels at a Henderson Harley-Davidson dealership just moments following the shooting incident. Additionally, an individual identified by the police as an anonymous witness provided a video showing 3 men wearing clothing associated with the Hells Angels approaching the Vagos group, including one person who seemed to be holding an object in their left hand just before gunfire erupted. The police discovered multiple bullet casings that had been fired for over a mile along the highway. However, according to the police account, it was uncertain whether the Vagos group had fired any shots or if all of those reported injured had sustained gunshot injuries. 2 people were in critical condition and had been hospitalized. During the initial court hearing, Judge David Gibson Sr. had this to say.
I believe that there is clear and convincing evidence that all of these defendants are a danger to the community.
DeVries was initially arrested, along with Stephen Allo and Russell Smith, who prosecutors have identified as prospects for the Hells Angels. However, the prospects were released from custody after posting $75,000 bail. During the indictment, the prosecutors accused the Las Vegas Hells Angels chapter of operating as a criminal syndicate over 3 years. Prosecutors claim that DeVries was involved in directing, supervising, and financing the organization. He was also said to have incited violence or included others to do so to gain status within the hierarchy of the Hells Angels or to target members of the Viral Vagos Motorcycle Club.
All the defendants in this case that are currently before Your Honor today have been charged with racketeering. The Hells Angels has been deemed by the Clark County Grand Jury to be a criminal syndicate.
The defense had this to say.
Angels Motorcycle Club has not been found by a jury in the state of Nevada to be a criminal gang.
Later on, District Judge Tierra Jones denied a motion to recall an arrest warrant for DeVries. As the court proceedings were going on, Jones ordered DeVries to be taken into custody and set his bail at $250,000. Like most of the other Hells Angels members, DeVries showed no emotion and even looked quite cooperative. There's no news of him posting bail, meaning he's being held indefinitely till his next court date. Next, we'll go down to the case of Jay Witt, who was accused of second-degree murder and using a firearm to commit a felony. Jay Witt will face a trial in connection with the death of William Furlong, who was found dead at the Hells Angels Motorcycle Clubhouse in July 2013. The Hells Angels motorcycle surveillance video showed him entering the clubhouse with his girlfriend and leaving with a plastic bag. He was wiping the door handles and doors before driving away. Witt's girlfriend, Tammy Kozak, faces accessory and tampering with evidence charges and is currently in custody. During the interview with authorities, Kozak told a police sergeant that Witt woke her up, claiming to have fought with someone. Witt then told her that she would find a body downstairs. Witt was apprehended after nearly 2 weeks of issuing an arrest warrant. Prosecutors argued that Witt and Furlong had been fighting before the murder. Prosecutor Matt Kuss requested the maximum sentence for manslaughter and emphasized the kind of person the victim, Mr. Furlong, was. It would be very easy to call this case a homicide involving persons of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, but that minimizes the type of person Mr. Furlong was as a father and family man, Kuss says. Sergeant Rocher Jenkins of the Omaha Police Department testified that Furlong's body was found between a couch and a bar at the clubhouse. A woman present that night claimed Witt killed Furlong after an argument and forced her to help remove evidence. At the sentencing, Kuss revealed that Furlong was shot 3 times, and investigators believed Witt tried to make it look like a break-in by a rival motorcycle club. Kuss mentioned Witt as the only person who could provide further information on the case, but he refused to cooperate. During the sentencing, Jay Witt chose not to speak, but his lawyer, Daniel Stockman, informed the judge that Witt had the potential to make a compelling argument for self-defense. Stockman explained that the possibility of Witt receiving a habitual criminal sentence convinced him to accept the plea bargain. According to Stockman, the evidence presented in court only supported the charge of manslaughter, and he argued that it also could have been a case of self-defense. He stated, "This was not a murder. The facts at best would find manslaughter, if not self-defense." Dawn Furlong, the wife of the victim, asked Judge Lee Ann Rettelsdorf to consider her husband's character beyond his affiliation with the motorcycle club. She described him as a loving family man who provided immense support and stability to their home. She urged the judge to not let stereotypes in appearance cloud her judgment and to understand the love and integrity her husband possessed. Look beyond his appearance and stereotypes. Please understand the depth of love and integrity he possessed, she said. Witt was sentenced to a total of 20 years for manslaughter, 10 to 20 years for using a firearm to commit a felony, and 3 to 10 years for possessing a firearm as a felon. Witt pleaded no contest to all 3 charges related to the killing of William Furlong as a result of a plea deal with the Douglas County Attorney's Office, which removed a habitual criminal charge that could have resulted in harsher sentencing. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.